Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a check of the headlines this hour. As the conundrum over Russia-Ukraine peace deal grows, Ukraine hints at hope, says common understanding reached with the United States on peace deal aimed at ending war with Russia. US President Donald Trump has said that the proposal for Ukraine peace deal has been fine-tuned with collaboration of both Ukraine and Russia, and US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff will be meeting Russian President Vladimir Putin next week. Kremlin aide Ushakov says Russia has received the latest versions of the US peace plan on Ukraine. Kremlin calls parts of the latest plan to end war as positive. Gaza's health ministry says that Israel returns the bodies of 15 Palestinian prisoners on 26 November under the US brokered ceasefire exchange deal. Israel confirms the identity of the hostage body returned by Hamas on Tuesday. The hostage has been identified as Dror Or. With the latest handover of Or's remains, it leaves 2 more hostages still held in the territory. China warned it will crush all foreign interference over Taiwan after Japan announced plans to deploy missiles near the island, as Beijing reasserted its claim over Taiwan and criticized Japan's move. Taiwan has maintained that only Taiwan can decide the island's future. This comes as Taiwan announces that they are to boost their defense spending to increase Taiwan's 2026 defense spending to 33.32% of GDP, with Taiwanese president declaring that the move aims to deter Beijing. At least 4 people have been killed in a major fire that has engulfed a residential building in Hong Kong's northern Tai Po district. Several people are still trapped inside the building. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen addressed the European Union Parliament on Wednesday, urging Europe to maintain pressure on Russia until a just peace and lasting peace is achieved. In her speech, she also expressed support for US President Donald Trump's efforts to negotiate peace, stressing that any agreement must guarantee real security for both Ukraine and Europe. Von der Leyen warned that legitimizing the undermining of borders today could pave the way for more conflicts in the future. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, meanwhile, said he is ready to advance a US-backed framework for peace and has called for talks with Trump, including discussions with European allies to address key points of contention. Listen in to what the European Commission President had to say first.
A just and lasting peace, this is what we all want. And this is why Europe supports all efforts to build that peace for Ukraine. A peace that stops the killing, one that avoids setting a dangerous precedent, one that guarantees Ukraine's security and its sovereign rights in the long term, and that ensures a robust security architecture for Europe. This is why we welcome the efforts led by President Trump. After months of discussions, it is important that the work on an actual text started. Europe's future is bound to Ukraine's future, and therefore Ukraine's future lies in the European Union. This is not only a matter of destiny, this is a core and essential part of any security guarantee framework, and we will do everything we can to deliver on it together.
And a retired Major General Sudhar Kirji, who's an international relations and defense expert, is now joining us live from the national capital of India, New Delhi. I extend you a very warm welcome, Sudhar Kirji, here at NewsX World. Now, European Union chief says that Russia needs to be needs to make more efforts to ensure the war comes to an end, and EU must ensure that there is pressure that continues to remain on Russia to achieve peace. She also has warned that Russia's frozen assets could be used. Now, we had some voices coming in that said that it's largely impossible to do that. Do you think that could really turn out to be a possibility?
Yeah, Kriti, good evening. Thank you for taking me for your show. Very important and relevant question which you have raised. Yes, why not? Why not? If they want meaningful, comprehensive, lasting peace, then a multi-pronged approach has to be adopted by all the relevant stakeholders. And towards that end, I think Donald Trump and his team, they have made a very sincere and a holistic effort has been made. Now, it also includes, there are almost close to 27,000 sanctions which have been imposed against Russia from the year 2014. To be more precise and specific, 2014 to 2022, April 24, sorry, February 24, there were almost about 2,676, and the balance actually have been imposed on Russia between the commencement of the invasion till date. So, besides the freezing of the assets that you are talking of, almost close to little over, I think, 300 billion US dollar, I think it should be given back to Russia in whatever form or kind or contour they wish to. Only then the trust, the biggest victim, Kriti, in today's environment, when the geopolitical churn is in its ultimate stage, is the trust. There is a huge trust deficit. So that is all I have to say at the moment, unless you have a second question coming. I also have a couple of points to dilate. Back to you.
Please go on.
Okay, now it is to be understood that the prominent and the relevant stakeholders includes all the NATO members. NATO members means while Donald Trump by himself, all by himself, he would have had a vision to bring this war to an end within 24 hours of his assumption of presidency 2.0.
Right.
While may not have been possible, yet here is a man who's sticking his neck out and to bring this mindless conflict to an end. So when you try to bring the conflict, an avoidable conflict to an end, you will have lots of pulls and pressures from visible and invisible stakeholders. There is a deep state within America which does not want this conflict to come to an end. That deep state is intertwined or connected with almost all the states, all the countries in the Europe. They also don't want this conflict to come to an end. And also you would remember, you would do well to recall that in January this year itself, United Kingdom has signed a strategic partnership with Ukraine for 100 years.
Right.
What it means is that any kind of danger, security, threat to its sovereignty, UK will always stand by and come to its help. And words to that effect. I may not be able to reproduce the language verbatim, but this is the kind of deal which they have gone in for. And April, take your mind back to April 2022. The invasion commenced on 24th of February 2022. By April, the talks were already in progress. They were in the advanced stage. In Istanbul, if I remember and respect my memory, they were almost in the final stages of signing an agreement. That is the time when the Prime Minister of UK came running. He said, no, let the conflict carry on. So therefore, there is a pull and push model which is in application today. While all-out effort is going in from Donald Trump to bring this mindless conflict to an end, there are people also within Europe and America who want this conflict to carry on. Now coming to Russia, that point you made, you see Russia, as far as if you want a solution, you need to diagnose the disease correctly. The disease that is to be diagnosed by a doctor or by a military analyst like me is by joining all the dots. The historical perspective, the geographical perspective, the geopolitics and everything. The bottom line of this conflict to come to an end is the Russia's aspirations have to be heard first. Second, all the hardware, military hardware which are being provided by USA and the European Union or NATO forces, they have to stop. And the peace proposal will hold out because this is the most pragmatic, most practical actually way forward, which 28-point proposal which has been mooted by Donald Trump and his team. Yes, little bit of give and take and tweaking has to be carried out, but broadly, I think it is on the right lines to see lasting peace at the end of the day. Back to you, Kriti.
Right. I want to ask you another quick question now. While we do know that NATO membership is mostly ruled out for Ukraine, but given the stance that Ursula von der Leyen has taken now, do you think a European Union membership is possible for Ukraine?
Well, that is how it begins. Now, firstly, let me kill the issue. The moment you touch the point regarding the NATO membership to be given to Ukraine, well, the peace proposal falls flat. It does not have any future, because that is what the main contention of Russia is. Okay, so now to reach up to that status of getting a membership of the NATO, a small and slow beginning always starts with the membership of European Union. You take the example of any country, whoever is a NATO member. Way back in 1949, they had 12 members. By 1990-91, they had 16. By 94-98, they had almost about 19. And today we have 32 members. Most of the cases you would find, while some of them are not European Union members, but NATO members, some of them are NATO members, but not European members, but this would actually trigger the process and edge it forward closer and closer in an incremental manner, in a salami slicing manner, the Chinese way they call it, and bring it closer to such a level of becoming a member of NATO that the whole world also would be taken complacent and would take it for granted that all is hunky-dory and nothing bad or adverse is likely to take place. So give him the status of NATO member. So therefore I would say it is always better to be cautious under the circumstances. Let the ceasefire take place as per the peace proposal. There are two things one has to understand. The first thing is a lasting security apparatus or the architecture between the Eastern Europe and the Central Europe. When I talk about this, the boundary which is actually joining country like Belarus, or you have Poland, you have Romania, you have Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, going up to Finland, almost about 2,000 kilometer long border. Something has to be positioned there so that they ensure that the sphere of influence of NATO does not go beyond this line, or some mechanism has to work. The second one is within the Ukraine itself. There are two blocks which are standing out in the peace proposal. One block is consisting of Crimea, the second one is Donetsk, and the third one is Luhansk. So it is amply clarified after several consultations with all the stakeholders that this conflict will not come to an end until unless you give the status of these three oblasts belonging to Russia. There is a little portion in Donetsk which is about 10% with Ukraine today, and that has to be foregone by the Ukraine as per the demands of the Russia. So all these three they come under Russia's jurisdiction. Next you have is Zaporizhia and Kherson. In these two provinces, wherever the contact line is existing, the conflict has to freeze there, and both the sides, they have to draw a line, and that line will be called as whatever you wish to call it, international border or line of control, and the portion which is there inside of the Russia will be under Russia. Then the scale of the military population, that is the armed forces of Ukraine, presently it is 900,000, it has to be scaled down to 600,000. That is a proposal which is mooted, and the most important thing is that there has to be some guarantee, assured security guarantee to Ukraine, that should its security be threatened in future, there has to be some guarantee. My counter question is, isn't Ukraine guaranteed by a security agreement which was signed way back in 1994? Russia itself is supposed to provide security cover. America is there. UK is supposed to provide. Why haven't they actually budged? The issue therefore comes to Minsk 1 and Minsk 2, 2014 and 15, when both the agreements were signed. Germany, UK, France, they played a very active role, and they almost came to an agreement, but nothing fructified because of division within these two groups. There is a party which is wanting to push the conflict ahead. There is another party which does not want the conflict ahead. That is, it's a small party. That small party is led by Donald Trump. I wish and pray that his vision and commitment made during the election campaigning sees the light of the day, and I am very hopeful this mindless conflict will come to an end.
Well, we do hope for the same, and I thank you now for joining us here at NewsX World, Major General Retired Sudhakarji there on NewsX World. And with that, viewers, we now shift our focus to news coming in from Israel on the Gaza front. Now, Gaza's health ministry says that Israel has returned the bodies of 15 Palestinian prisoners on 26 November under the U.S. brokered ceasefire exchange deal. This brings the total number of bodies received to 345. The ministry says the bodies were transferred through the International Committee of the Red Cross. These bodies were returned in exchange for the remains of Dror Or, one of the last 3 deceased Israeli hostages held in the Palestinian territory. Dror Or's body was handed over to Israel on 25th November by Hamas via the International Committee of the Red Cross. And we're now joined in by Sasha Mashta, who is a political commentator. He's joining us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you for joining us, Sasha, here at NewsX World. How do you see this development now?
So I remind you that each hostage, deceased hostage released by Hamas comes in exchange for 15 Palestinian bodies, as stipulated in the agreement. Of course, we're very happy that a new hostage body has been released. The family has been waiting for 2 years for a proper burial and to close the circle and to move on from this painful 2 years. So, of course, this is a significant development. There are only 2 hostage bodies left in Gaza, one non-Israeli and one Israeli citizen. Of course, for us, we do not distinguish between the nationality. Each hostage body is extremely valuable and worth everything, and we cannot give up until both of these bodies are released, and they will be treated equally until the families get the burial they deserve. The situation in Gaza is also very concerning in these days, especially this week, as Hamas is still refusing to disarm, which is the next condition for phase 2, which is essentially Hamas disarmament and leaving the Gaza Strip, which is something until now they've refused to. So we're going to have to see what leverage is going to be used this week and in the coming days to see the next stage of phase 2.
All right. Well, do you think any violation of ceasefire is likely now, or are those chances of violation reduced with the return of the hostage body?
Hamas continues to violate the agreement in 2 ways. One, they continue to hold the bodies of hostages and lie that they don't know where they are. They also, previously with the recent body that was returned, they had announced that they had found the hostage but held onto his body for many hours in violation of the ceasefire. Whenever they find or discover a hostage body, they're supposed to immediately return them. So that's one of the violations. The other is that they continue to send Hamas militant terrorists into the Israeli yellow line side, which is another violation of the ceasefire, and shoot the Israeli soldiers. So this is a concerning violation that we've been seeing frequently since the ceasefire began. However, I don't think that these violations are going to lead to the renewal of the war. Hamas doesn't have the power to launch a full-out war and incursion to Israel, and Israel has no interest in resuming war. What Israel does want is for Hamas to disarm, and hopefully the ISF that was agreed to by the UN Security Council will be formed soon. Countries will be willing, hopefully, to send their troops into Gaza and help in the disarmament. If not, there's also reports coming out of Israel that senior military officials are concerned about Hamas regrouping and rearming. So they're proposing some sort of action taken by Israel. But we're going to have to see if the ISF will do it or if Israel will do it. But one way or another, disarmament must happen. It's not an option. There's nothing else on the table for Israel.
All right. We'll request you to stay on with us, Sasha, as we also want to tell our viewers that Egypt's foreign minister Badra Abdellati has said that Egypt will spare no effort to diffuse any risks of escalation in Lebanon and calls for Israel's complete withdrawal from all Lebanese territory. After a year of ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah, the Israeli army still maintains 5 positions in South Lebanon with fortifications and widened access routes. Let's first listen in.
نحن يعني معنيون بشكل كامل باستقرار لبنان وبأهمية الانسحاب الكامل من كل الأراضي اللبنانية وتطبيق القرار الأممي 1701 بكل بنوده وبكل جوانبه ودون انتقائية، وهو ما يتطلب بطبيعة الحال وقف كل الانتهاكات الإسرائيلية للسيادة اللبنانية بكافة صورها وبشكل فوري.
All right, and I want to bring back Sasha into the discussions here. Sasha, firstly, if you could help our viewers understand the position that Egypt is taking, despite the fact that it continues to maintain relations with Israel.
So first of all, this is not going to cause a break between Israel and Egypt relations. This is, of course, a political statement by Sisi and his government to take a firm stance against Israel and their actions in Lebanon. We wouldn't expect anything else. I remind the viewers that many countries in the Middle East, they tend to make harsh statements against Israel in public, but behind closed doors, they cheer on for Israel to take on these jihadic terror groups that are also enemies of Egypt. Egypt has had years of problems with the Muslim Brotherhood, and they've managed to uproot it and to combat it, and Israel is fighting the same enemy and the same ideology. So I wouldn't look too much into this statement by Egypt. Israel is not going to retire their 5 positions from southern Lebanon as Hezbollah continues to build up their forces and rearm faster than they're being disarmed in southern Lebanon. This is, of course, a violation of the ceasefire where Hezbollah was supposed to fully disarm and not have a presence in the southern area of Lebanon beyond the Litani River. This is not the first time they violated this. In the UN resolution 1701, it also stipulated that Hezbollah was not supposed to be present in southern Lebanon, but the UNIFIL troops that were sent and other bodies that were supposed to overlook this were also turning a blind eye, and unfortunately this allowed a situation where Hezbollah was the de facto occupier and ruler of southern Lebanon. And since the war, since the ceasefire entered, Hezbollah has been severely weakened, and there was a compromise by the Lebanese government to actually disarm Hezbollah and for the Lebanese army to uproot Hezbollah and become the actual sovereign army, because the largest army until recently was actually Hezbollah. So Israel is both defending their own citizens of the north who cannot tolerate living next to Hezbollah terrorists who are pointing their rockets and just ready to launch ground invasion, as we saw on October 7th, to northern Israel. And at the same time, the Lebanese people can't live with this occupying force, de facto Iranian occupation. So Israeli actions in Lebanon are going to increase if the Lebanese government does not fulfill their commitment to disarm Hezbollah. And this, of course, is backed by the United States, who reports say are even pushing Israel to take further actions and disarm Hezbollah.
All right, well, thank you, Sasha, for joining us here on NewsX World. For now, we shift our focus. Viewers, a prominent Turkish journalist, Fatih Altayli, has appeared in court for the second time, now facing charges of threatening the president over comments made on his YouTube broadcast. He has been sentenced to 4 years and 2 months in prison at the second hearing of his trial. Altayli has been held in the Marmara prison in Silivri since June 2022. Prosecutors at the Istanbul 26th High Criminal Court had requested a prison sentence of not less than 5 years for the journalist. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's lawyer was also present at the hearing. Both the public prosecutor and the president's legal representative demanded Altayli's conviction. The arrest has drawn significant attention from the media, and academic community. The investigation has stemmed from comments Al-Taili made during a broadcast on June 20 regarding historical context. Al-Taili stated that the nation is one that strangled its Padishah when it did not like or want him. The number of Ottoman Padishahs killed, assassinated or strangled under the guise of suicide is not few. These remarks led to the investigation into charges of threatening the president. And with that, viewers, that's some news coming in from Hong Kong, where at least 4 people have been killed in a major fire that has engulfed a residential building in northern Tai Po district. Thick grey smoke was seen coming out of the structure as emergency crews worked to contain the blaze. According to the police reports, several people are trapped inside and one man has suffered serious burns. The fire department says it received the first call at 2:51 p.m. local time after flames broke out in Wang Fuk Court. The alarm level was quickly raised to a number 4 at 3:34 p.m. local time, signaling a severe incident. Wang Fuk Court is a large housing complex made up of 8 blocks with nearly 2,000 residential units. Several surrounding towers are covered in bamboo scaffolding, and Hong Kong's building, there are some complications that the firefighters are facing as of now. And that's all the time that we have for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news from across the world.